Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Kim Padmore and I'm the Director of People-to-People Recruitment Western Australia. I'm very excited to host today's webinar, Finding a Job in Perth. I'd like to begin today by acknowledging the Whadjuk people, the traditional custodians of the land on which we meet today, and pay my respects to elders past and present. I extend that respect to Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islanders peoples here today. Allow me to introduce a team who will be joining me today. So we've got Brittany Pipe, who will be providing tips on what to include and not to include on your CV. Rachel Adams, who will be discussing how to prepare for interviews. And Pearl Rabbe, who will be sharing tips on answering behavioural-based questions. There will be an opportunity to answer your questions at the end. So if you pop them into the little box on the side, and then we can go through those with you. So let's jump straight into the Perth market and talk about WA's job market. So as of August, the West Australian job market has... The West Australian job market has flourished in 2022 with a 22.7% increase in job advertisements compared to the year prior. We saw an increase of 105.8% of total job advertisements compared to pre-COVID levels. WA's unemployment rate fell to 3.1%, which is the lowest of all of the states. And over the year to August, employment has risen by about 70,000 new positions, or about 5%, which is the strongest in the nation. If we look at the share of employment by industry in WA, so the leading industries are healthcare and social assistance, mining, followed by retail, construction, education, professional, scientific, and technical. So some of the jobs that are in demand with our P2P clients include legal support, administration, we've got lots of HR recruitment positions at all levels, customer service and sales, accounting and finance across all levels, and also marketing and communications. So let's get Brittany Pipe on to talk to you about how to prepare your resume. Brittany is a recruitment consultant in our Perth office and assists our business support clients to find permanent employees. Brittany has joined our team this year all the way from the UK. So over to you, Brittany.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. So as a recruitment consultant over here in Perth, there's no denying that the current market is favourable to candidates in their active applications, with us seeing more jobs now than pre-pandemic. But it is imperative that when you do make the decision to enter the job market and progress with your job applications, that your resume stands out against other applicants. So the first impression that you set for your intentional employer is what will get you in the door. No one can sell yourself better than you. So the more specific you can be about your experience and what you feel you can bring to the company, the better. So here are some examples of what not to include in a resume. So starting off with the basics, make sure you go through your resume with a fine-tooth comb and check for any spelling or grammar mistakes and make sure that each sentence makes sense. Visually, I would suggest keeping it relatively basic and concise, so avoiding colourful fonts and colours. And with regards to catering your resume, make sure that you cater it to the job that you're actually applying for. So remove any irrelevant job experience if it makes sense and doesn't create too many employment gaps. And if you are producing a covering letter, do make sure that this is personable and apply it to the job that you're interested in, because employers can tell when you're using a generic template. And then for an example of what to include within your resume, so it is really important to include specific examples to back up your experience. So for example, if you can include times when you've implemented a new system or a process within your time at a company, or examples of when you've helped to coordinate change. Make sure you do include your specific job titles, and also include the years and the months that you were there at the company. So the more specific you can be, the better. If there are any gaps in your employment history, I would suggest including the reasons for those. And in terms of structure, I would break your resume up into bullet points rather than in paragraphs, so that employers find it easier to look through. And finally, include any relevant skills and education that you have. So if you do have any qualifications that would support your application, then make sure you do include this in your resume. So these are the tips that I would recommend. And once you've gone through this process and streamlined your resume, you'll feel even more confident with your applications, knowing you've put forward the best version of yourself.
Excellent. Thank you, Brittany. So just a couple of questions to ask you along the way. So we hear lots of mixed opinions around photos on resumes. So should I include a photo on my resume?
Yeah, that's a great question. I would suggest leaving the photo out of your resume. Makes it slightly too personal. So I would take out any photos that you have currently on your resume.
Excellent. Okay, great. And what about referee details? Do I need to include referee details on my CV?
I would avoid having the specific referee details. So at the end of your resume, you could just list references available on request. And then if your employer, or if you're working through an agency, if they do require those during the process, they can then obtain those specific information from you.
Okay. Excellent. And when it comes to personal details and what to include on a CV, is it important to include my personal details like my home address, my date of birth, those kind of things?
No, I would remove those from the resume. I think just keep that information private. And if you go through the process and that information is requested, if you are successful in your application, then you can divulge that information. But when you send out your resume, I would avoid that information on there.
Excellent. Okay. Well, thank you, Brittany, for your handy tips on making your resume stand out. So our next speaker is Rachel Adams. So Rachel works with a range of clients within the professional services space to find temporary staff. Rachel's going to talk to you today about how to prepare for interviews. So I'll hand you over now.
Thanks, Kim. So you can never be too prepared for an interview. So here are just a few tips and tricks to make sure that you leave a great lasting impression. So dressing your best. The age-old advice of dressing for the job you want is very true. Whether it's reception, a managerial position, or even a customer service position, it's always important to put your best foot forward and present yourself well. And being nervous. Everyone gets nervous and it's very natural. You want to impress and secure the role, but it's always good to remember that they're human too. Be friendly and kind whilst maintaining professionalism, and remember to be yourself. And planning ahead. Do a little study or reading about the company you're interviewing. It can go a long way. Make sure you know your resume back to front. You have your answers prepared, and it's always great to have some questions at the end for them as well. Shows your interest in the company and the role, and it's a great way to see if this role is right for you. And after the interview, make sure to thank them for their time and let them know you're looking forward to hearing from them. And touch base with your recruiter if you're with an agency. If not, you can send an email after to let them know how much you enjoyed meeting with them and the opportunity presented.
Excellent. So, Rachel, when it comes to the interview and obviously salary, should I ask about salary in the actual interview?
Yeah, great question. Well, salary is important and it can be a really big deciding factor. However, in an interview, it is best not to mention if an agency it's best not to mention. If an agency is representing you, they'll be across the role and the salary, and you can discuss with your agent exactly what you're looking for. They'll do all the negotiating and communication for you. If you're not represented by an agency, it's best to leave it to the end of the process and application, or the end of the interview process.
Okay, excellent. And you mentioned questions to make sure it's, you're finding the right fit for yourself. So what questions in particular do you think that I should ask the interviewer?
Yeah, of course. Well, some great questions can be like, what does a typical day look like with this role? What are the career opportunities with this company and this role? And can you tell me about the team? Can you describe the work environment? And how would you describe the company's values?
Excellent. Yeah, they're all really good suggestions. So yeah, interviews have definitely changed over the past couple of years. So thanks, Rachel, for your tips on how to best prepare for the next interviews. Our third speaker today joined People to People almost 2 years ago. So welcoming Pearl Rabbe. Pearl assists our legal clients with temporary hires. So she's going to talk to you today about how to answer behavioural-based questions. So to kick off, Pearl, what are behavioural questions?
Thanks for the intro, Kim. So a behavioural-based question, it's basically one that's designed to understand how you deal with certain situations in real life, like how you'd react. And they basically are there to gain, a better understanding of how you as an individual, deals with certain situations. So, and how suitable you would be for the position and organisation. So to best prepare for these questions, it's really important to obviously know what competencies and skills are required for the role that you're actually interviewing for. So, whether that's relationship building skills, it could be the ability to prioritize conflicting deadlines, it could be problem solving. So just to bring it to life a little bit, so an example of one of these would be, how do you prioritize conflicting deadlines and projects under pressure in the workplace? So I think the best advice which I can give is, I know it's really tough to, think on the spot, in terms of your response, but you don't want to just like skim over with your response as well. So you don't want to just say, oh yeah, in all of my roles, I've got to deal with prioritizing workloads. That's just part of my job. You want to really have a thought through and structured answer. So some of the helpful methods which you may have heard about before are the SAO, or the STAR method. So SAO stands for situation, action, outcome, and the STAR method is situation, tasks, action, result. So I think the best thing to do is like really tell like a specific story, bring it to life so the interviewer can really see like how suitable you are for the role. Again, I know it's really hard to know exactly which questions are going to come up and what they're going to ask. So I think best tip for this is to have a handful of situations that you've rehearsed before the interview, and then you can always, you can tweak parts of your story to highlight the most relevant part of that situation to align it to the actual like behavioral question that they're asking. But I say, finally, if you're really, really stuck and you're asked a question and you genuinely, don't know what to say, or you haven't been in that situation before, I think don't make up a situation. You can always acknowledge that you haven't actually done that thing before, but I think still use the SAO or STAR method and highlight a really transferable skill that's relevant. So yeah, I've had a situation like that recently with a candidate and client, and that worked quite well. So yeah.
Excellent. Thanks, Pearl. Yeah, some of those questions are quite tricky to answer correctly, and make sure you're giving all the right information. So that gives some really great framework. So we are close to wrapping up, and whilst we're on the topic, Pearl, I'll throw this one to you, a question that's come through on the chat. So Thomas has asked, do you have an example for how we could actually use the STAR system? So are there any examples that you can talk through where you can kind of break down those different sections?
Yeah, so I think, look, this is just me on the spot, but, say, for example, you had a client and they said, how do you deal with conflicting priorities in the workplace? You want to be able to say something along the lines of, so when I was working at this company, last year, we were working on this transaction, for example, lots of other transactions were coming through. So I needed to, get together as a team to work out which were the priorities. So sat down with my manager, we decided which kind of were more important than the others, and we came to a conclusion of how to prioritize those. Obviously, that's a bit like, obviously you'd be very specific in your actual examples in terms of the transaction and the conversations and things like that to bring it to life a little bit. But yeah, hopefully that's helpful.
Yeah, I think, being as specific as possible is the key, isn't it, really? Because, we get a lot of people come through and register and interview with us. And often candidates will just be very broad brush with their answers and will say, oh, yeah, well, I had that all the time in my last role. But if an interviewer is asking you for a specific competency and a specific example, you need to really kind of draw on a specific instance. Otherwise, you're not answering the question correctly. Okay, we'll just go through a few more questions that have come through here. So back to Thomas again. So in regards to the market, so would you say with the market being as in demand as it is it more difficult for a recent grad student to find a job? So I'll answer that one. I would say no. I think now there are more opportunities than ever to get your foot in the door. So we've also seen a lot of candidates successfully secure positions that may not have been considered previously because they didn't have enough experience. Whereas now it's, everybody's hiring and looking for the same kind of thing. So we're finding that employers are being much more flexible on their criteria. So I think now it's a better time than any, really, to get your foot in the door. Or if it's, someone wanting to transition into a different career as well, it's a good opportunity to get in now. GB, just to go back to you, I know you've said you want a cleaning job. Unfortunately, we don't do any of those types of positions. So we focus on all white collar business and professional services type positions. So won't be able to help you with those ones. Just going to Naya's question. So Naya, I got laid off back in 2020 after my job went under from COVID. I was only there for a short amount of time, so 9 months. Should I include this time period in my CV or just leave it out? So Brittany, I'll put that one to you. Should Naya leave that time period out or include it?
Hi, Naya. So I would still include that information. 9 months is still quite a long time, and you may have gained some really valuable experience during your time at that company. So I would still put that information in and put as much detail as you can in terms of your roles and responsibilities. And you can always include the reason of why you left. And if you are going through an employer or you're going through an agency, they will go through your resume and they may ask the question regarding the period of time that you were there. So you can always confirm those details, and then an agency can always provide that information to the employer on your behalf.
Yeah, I would have to agree. I think honesty is key as well, not leaving stuff out. And especially in Perth, it's such a small market. It's almost like everyone knows everyone, or you're 1 degree away. So if you leave something out and then it gets uncovered, there might be then concerns around that. Whereas it's just COVID and a lot of people experience that. So I think it's best to kind of put it all out there and talk through it. So Rachel, I'll put this one to you from Isabel. So Isabel's asked us, what way of interviewing do you think will be the norm moving forward? So are we likely to stay with virtual, or are face-to-face meetings becoming more common again?
Thanks, Kim. I would say with the new age, especially during COVID, we've seen a large increase in online interviews, especially through Microsoft Teams. However, I think the traditional face-to-face will make a comeback. I feel like you can gauge so much more in a person when you meet them face-to-face. You can show so much more personality and really get a feel for them. However, I do think the age of still doing online interviews will happen. It's just so much easier, especially with a lot of things happening over East and a lot of, interstate roles coming up. I feel as though a lot of people can find it a bit more accessible.
Yeah, great. And while we've got you, Rachel, so Isabel's also asked, when is too soon to follow up after an interview?
Yeah, great question. I would say I'd give it a day or so, just due to the fact that they may be interviewing other people and they have their own schedule to stick to. So I'd say maybe a day or so after your interview, just to touch base with them, to just show your gratitude and appreciation for them taking time out of their day to speak with you.
Excellent. Yeah, I think sometimes, they might have back-to-back interviews in one day. So I think at least leaving that day to kind of let them think about the interview, review all your details, your application, your answers, and kind of make a decision on their shortlisting process. But definitely good to follow up. We always encourage our candidates to follow up as well. And it just shows that you're keen and interested. So especially if, there's an interviewer who's met with two candidates, both have very similar profiles, so same experience, both could be really good fits for the team, but one candidate really kind of goes above and beyond to show they're keen, they're interested, they follow up, they're, keen to hear back, versus the other one, and they're not as sure whether that one's as interested. They're more likely to go with the candidate that they feel is actually going to accept their job offer and is interested. So, definitely good to follow up. Okay, let me just see if we've got any other questions. So, Brittany, I'll put this one to you from Daniel. So, Daniel has asked us, so Daniel said, I'm 58. What is the current climate for mature new employees?
Thanks, Kim. Yeah, it's a great question. So the clients that we work with, a lot of the time they are looking for certain types of experience and a lot of background in certain industries that they're from. So depending on what roles we have and the clients that we work with, we do get a job brief that we go through, and they often do specify that they're looking for someone who has experience or background in a certain industry. So I think moving forward, I think we're finding that the roles that are coming through, it's more based on experience and the right fit. So for us, we never will employ or interview someone based on their age. It's about the relevancy to the role and how we think they're best suited for the position.
Excellent. Yeah, and I think, age is relevant, but it's more about experience. And I think it is still now a good time that if you do want to get into something different, because the employers are being more flexible, it's a good opportunity for a lot of people to try something a little bit different as well. Okay, Pearl, I'll put this next one to you from Ben. So Ben has asked us, he said, what to do when you have a master's in geology and 1 year experience, and since 2015 have not been working in mining. What should Ben do?
So this is just my personal opinion. There's obviously lots of different options and routes that you could go down, but I honestly think a really good way just to try out different industries and roles, even if you haven't got prior experience in them, is to, start off in a temp or contract role. I've placed people into various roles, whether it's, in professional services or in the medical space, property space, with no prior experience. And sometimes it's even just like you go in for a day shift or a week or 2 weeks. And then, you can really get an understanding of the place, the industry, whether it's, a place you'd like to work. And honestly, some people have been so surprised. They've gone into roles where they think, don't think it's really for me, and have been pleasantly surprised. I've even had people who have gone in for like a 1 day receptionist assignment, and then they've ended up going into a permanent role down the track. So you never know what can come with it. So yeah, hopefully that answers your question.
Excellent. And we've got a question from Shikar here as well, so I'll answer this one. Ties into the previous question from Thomas. So Shikar has asked, how is the times for recent graduates to get into IT roles in Perth? So I would say the same as what I was saying to Thomas, in that now is a good time for graduates to get into whatever field it is that you're trying to break into. I think in particular, the technology in the IT space has been very busy. We've definitely seen a lot of entry-level IT, help desk support type positions, especially now because there is so much work from home, there's remote working and the reliance on technology. So yeah, we've definitely had more of those positions in the last 2 years than we've seen previously. So I think now is your best bet. Okay, we've got a comment here or a question from Daniel as well. So Brittany, I'll put this one to you because this could tie into the actual application and resume and that kind of thing. So Daniel said he's got a doctorate, 98 applications out, but 0 interviews. Are there any tips or anything you could share with Daniel to maybe help him?
Yeah, so I would say the best thing you can do, you can only tell so much from a resume. So I know it can be really difficult to be able to put yourself across only through paper, especially if clients are receiving a lot of applications for a role. It is quite difficult to make your resume stand out. So I would suggest if you do have any contact details that are provided on the job advert, to call the company. You can still apply for the role and send through your resume if it's a role that's of interest. And then you could follow that up with a call and say, I've just seen this job advert. I just wanted to express my interest. You can then talk about your current situation, talk about any experience that you have that you think may be relevant. And in that instance, it would be really great to cross-reference against the job description and see some of the main areas and expertise that they're looking for, so that you can say, I noticed that you're looking for this, I have this background, or I have this qualification, so that they can see that you are very interested in the role and you've applied. And they can also tell from the tone of your voice of how interested you are in the position, and that may really help to build up that rapport with the client before meeting them.
Yeah, it definitely comes down to building that relationship and rapport building, because there's only so much, as you say, that you can actually put on paper. Okay, Rachel, I'll put a question to you from Nadine. So Nadine has asked, I've had a series of short-term positions over the past few years by my choice, as I haven't found the position that was the right fit for me. I was recently asked why in an interview and told it concerned the employer as they're looking for a long-term staff member. Is there any way I can make this look more positive, and how can I explain this that doesn't make me sound fussy?
Yeah, of course, Nadine. I definitely think contract or temporary roles can become a lifestyle. I mean, it is quite accessible and you get a bit more freedom with it, getting to choose what roles you do and things like that. When it comes to applying for permanent roles, I think it is always best to highlight that they are contract roles. Even in your resume or when you're going for an interview and applying, it is always best, and honesty is the best policy. So you can let them know that these have been by your choice. It has just suited your lifestyle so far, but you're looking to join a permanent team and, put down some roots. I think it's definitely just best to keep an open mind, and especially when it comes to clients, and only applying to places where they understand that.
Excellent. Yeah, I think that is the key, isn't it? Emphasizing that you are now looking for something permanent as well. So I think, before they even ask you the question of why so many temp roles, I'd beat them to it. I'd get in there first and say, I know if you look at my CV, I've had a lot of short-term assignments. That has been by my own choice. I've really enjoyed the flexibility and the short-term nature that's come with that, but I am now looking for a long-term permanent fit. Shakar has asked, hi there, also keen to know about the job opportunities in electrical engineering in Perth. Shakar, it's not really our area of specialty, so I don't want to make it up and talk about the market in that space without properly knowing. So I'd recommend reaching out to agencies that do specialise in the engineering space, because it's not really, our expertise, as I say. Zane has asked, how difficult is it to get a grad mechanical engineering role in Perth after a gap of a year where the experience gained is in a different industry? So Zane, again, it's the engineering space isn't really our specialty. However, I would say at the moment, as I was referring to earlier, now is actually quite a good time to gain experience in a new industry whilst employers are being a bit more flexible. But I couldn't comment on what the actual market is like for mechanical engineering specifically. So again, I'd recommend reaching out to an agency that do specialise in that space. Let me just see if there's any other questions. No, I think that is it. Well, yeah, thanks everybody for your time. So that concludes our Finding a Job in Perth today. We hope you enjoyed hearing from our three speakers, Brittany, Rachel, and Pearl, and gained some helpful tips to help you in finding your next job. If you are looking for a new role or considering a career change, please feel free to contact our team in the Perth office on 0861606200. Our team are always here to help and would love to help you find your dream job. Thanks for spending your time with us today.